So, morning. This is the first edition of the world exclusive diagnosis of Fleet Street, the British newspapers published mainly from London. And they used to be published from, all of them used to be, or most of them used to be, based in the Fleet Street. So the name has stuck. Fleet Street denotes, it doesn't connote, but it denotes the location, which is the newspapers that are published from London and London-centric agenda. So this is part A, and it says that on the front page, it says that the Brothers at War, which is focusing on the so-called row between the children, Diana's children. I think it's accurate to say Diana's children. You never know what they say. The bombshell biography continues. See pages 22 to 25. That's the biography written by Tom Bawa. But the main quote news claims that Johnson has made a dramatic 10-year pledge, wind farms to power every home. This is Johnson doing electioneering, and it's a desperate kind of bid. And Johnson, being Johnson, on his records, Johnson doesn't tell the truth. Johnson tells lies in order to suit the particular moment. And this is the type of lying that Johnson's main political idol, Boris Johnson, controlling Trump. Trump is kind of personifying in his own versions of the desperate lying over in the USA. If Trump is ill, if he is ill, then he can't leave the hospital after less than 3 days. And if he is not ill, then he made it up in order to stage, in order to get their sympathy from his so-called fans and supporters. Either way, Trump is lying and caught lying. Now, as we have said before, the experience of the husband of Kate Garraway, Derek Draper, has been most extensively reported by the fact that she is a presenter on the ITV's Good Morning Britain. And her colleagues have gone out of their way to keep viewers posted on a long list of kind of states in which Derek Draper had been for months, including the fact that he would never speak, he would stay in a coma forever, and all those things. And then the other one, which is publicly kind of identifiable, is the writer known also as the children's writer, Mike Rosen. So those two have been more kind of extensively in the public eye in terms of their accounts and in terms of their various states of the illness and the devastating effect each one has been having to deal with. Imagine, compared to either of those, how is it that Boris Johnson only stayed in hospital for less than a week? And Trump has left hospital even after less than 3 days. And they're all supposedly suffering from the same COVID-19 virus. This is the most astonishing set of comparisons, and I leave it there because all the details are accessible publicly, or enough details are accessible publicly. Now, the Daily Mail is not taking that view about Trump. It is still kind of promoting Trump, thumbs up. And they've got 2 pages. Trump back at White House, as if he just conquered some kind of territory or some kind of foe. It's not somebody who is ill with a deadly virus. I mean, look at that. The Daily Mail is not even bothering to put any quotation mark. And they've got a cocktail of 9 drugs saving the Donald. They're saying that the 9 drugs have saved him. And then they say, of course, that Trump, they call him president, but I prefer Trump, rips off his mask and says he's back on campaign trail as he checks out of hospital after 3 days, but doctors say he's not out of the woods yet. Now, I keep using this phrase. They've been doing it for the last 48 hours. He's not out of the woods yet. So which one is the truth? Trump lying or his doctors lying? And there is a piece we shall come to on page 12 about the crook that was the boss of the post office who harassed and criminalized and criminally attacked post office kind of managers, post office staff of crimes that they had not committed. And this is the one on pages 6 and 7 that is still kind of apologizing, like promoting Boris Johnson for the lying about the 50,000 missing cases in testing. They call it fiasco. I mean, they still don't call them dangerous, lethal, enemies of the people, anything like that. They would have called Corbyn or even Starmer, if Starmer was in place, enemy of the people or enemies of the people, if the plural Labour Party was being used. And the Daily Mail analysis still doesn't say that it is Boris Johnson's failure or the unfitness of Dido, Harding, the over-promoted, over-rewarded chum of David Cameron, the Brexiteer. And here is a rare kind of headline, which is absolutely unbelievable. But it has taken hundreds of years to be put in a Daily Mail piece. Welsh threat to English. Now, how long have the Welsh been waiting for that kind of headline? Welsh threat to English. I mean, the Welsh have not been able to threaten the English for hundreds of years. So here it is: cross border and you face quarantine. That's the funny kind of angle. And there are kind of promotions for Rishi Sunak and Boris Johnson, even when they're talking about the financial crisis and financial losses. And the Daily Mail is questioning the lockdown. What is the logic behind lockdowns? But still the Daily Mail is not telling the truth. And the lying Daily Mail is lying in not reporting itself. Where are the stages? What stages of the virus do people encounter? And how do they actually get the virus? It's not good enough to say X or Y area has got X number of kind of when they can count, when they don't miss the tests and all the other things, that X and Y area has got that many number of tests, positive or negative. And they don't say anything about the gender, the age, and other things, because there must be in the last, now it's almost 9 months. If it's COVID-19, then it is 10 months. And they have had enough data and enough evidence for them to be able to say a particular generic kind of set of patterns, because they've got enough, as I say, data, and they've been kind of looking at data, although they're fiddling it at the same time, but they're looking at it and they have the data. What data they do have, they can make a generic set of patterns based on them. So why don't they? Because being told that that area or this area has got that many kind of numbers or potential increase in numbers doesn't help the individual person feel any confident information. So where is the information? And what is the purpose of the Daily Mail and the other papers? Because they are not telling the readers and the public the actual facts. So those pages and pages and pages are stuffed full of rubbish, promoting Boris Johnson, 95% of the papers. And the 5% that are not promoting necessarily are not really finding him guilty. Although the absolute majority of his behavior on the evidence factually would constitute severe negligence, dishonesty, failure, and like a grasshopper, he is hopping from one headline or one desperate kind of stunt to the other. He's not telling the truth, and he's not capable of telling the truth. And the tabloid Fleet Street are not capable of telling the truth about his lying. So they're letting down the readers, they're letting down the gullibles, and they're still misleading the gullibles, the majority of the gullibles in this country. So where is they're putting a thing on the buck stops here. They're saying the buck stops here in the cartoon. And there is a cartoonish thing about the narcissism of Donald Trump. It's a glass, break glass in case of photo opportunity. That is the really telling almost the truth about Trump, the narcissist, the racist, the liar, the denier. And the video that is doing the rounds, there is a video clip of Trump doing the rounds this last kind of few hours, which appears to have been seen by several million viewers. Not that we go by number of viewers to establish whether that is the proof of the quality of any item, because we don't, as the Khoodeelaar campaign, we don't recruit friends and followers, and we don't follow anyone. So we just publish, and that is the policy. But most of the other people seem to be obsessed with viewer numbers. We discourage viewer numbers as the criteria. And so there is no evidence that Trump's supporters or promoters in Fleet Street are aware of the fact that the video that is doing the rounds showing Trump unable to speak, although he's appearing as if he's being kind of put on a platform to speak. And that particular video shows him unable to speak. He's making facial gestures, but the gestures are kind of dominated by the evidence of his being looking very ill. And many of the people who have been retweeting that one have remarked on the fact that he looks very unwell. So there is this piece in the diary about Martin Bashir, who is said here, quoting a BBC source, that Martin is seriously unwell. So they're not putting any questions to him about his false bank accounts that he showed to Earl Spencer, Diana's brother, which allegedly were the basis for Diana agreeing to be interviewed by Bashir in 1995. Well, apparently, Diana has reportedly said later that those two bank accounts played no part in her agreeing to be interviewed. And then this 2 pages by Robert Lacey on pages 22 and 23 about these two brothers, Diana's two sons. So this is the depth of the degeneration of Fleet Street, of the stupidity. Well, it's 4 pages actually, because it's going on to page 25. And the headline there: 2 little boys scarred and adrift after Diana fired their surrogate mother out of jealousy. So the surrogate mother, Barbara Barnes, who is shown pictured carrying an infant Williams in 1983. And there is a lot of rubbish in the Daily Mail about the pop stars and all the rest of it. And it's not a newspaper that is telling the truth about the complete disarray. Now, how can that 50,000 cases or test cases or numbers have disappeared? How can that be treated as if it's a minor matter? 50,000 people's lives. And they're not even calling for Johnson to resign, let alone anybody else to resign from his cabal. And the Daily Mirror is, of course, talking about the drugs death of the children. And that is not a one-off. That is actually evidence of the complete dysfunction by the local councils and the other so-called authorities that are supposed to be looking after or safeguard the children's interests and well-being. Killed by drugs 2 days after starting university. Now, how is that possible? And there is a reluctant piece on the state of Trump's lying on page 4 of the Daily Mirror, which is headlined "Insanity. Medics blast COVID carrier Trump's PR stunt in car." But what the Daily Mirror doesn't understand is that Trump is faking it. Either he is not ill or he is ill. He cannot be both. So he is faking something, because he is behaving as if he is ill and he is behaving as if he is not ill. Because 9 types of drugs, as the Daily Mail says, have kept him alive or in health or out of the woods, contrary to the other statement saying that he is not out of the woods. Whatever description, whatever kind of line is taken, Trump is lying. And that is what should be dominating the headlines and the coverage. Instead, they're covering up. Even the papers are infected by Trump's lying duplicity. They are contradicting and publishing contradictory comments about him. And there is nothing really in the Daily Mirror. And the Daily Express is celebrating both Trump and Johnson on the front page. And also, in a way, celebrating the fact that COVID tax rises on the way, as Rishi Sunak is saying. But the way they put the headline on the Trump's return to the White House shows that he's come from a big adventure. not from a hospital. So this is the paper for the gullible. This is the other paper for the gullibles. And there is no alternative to the gullibles being exploited by these organs of lying. No alternative from the so-called labor-supporting Daily Mirror. Most certainly not from the Guardian. Because the Guardian is promoting Boris Johnson today as being a green person, showing green in kind of ambition. It's not green ambition by Boris Johnson. It is green fakery by Boris Johnson, confection. Just like he wrote 2 alternative speeches about Brexit. He's doing this just to con people, and the media are complicit with his conning. All right, this is the one that I have mentioned before, Kate Garraway's husband. And it is funny because it is not in the other papers, but the Express is talking about Kate Garraway. And she is reportedly bewildered by the behavior, Trump's behavior. And I shall read this one because this is what I have mentioned before seeing this one in the paper, because I have mentioned it on the basis of what I have observed before. Kate Garraway, whose husband remains seriously ill from COVID-19, has branded Donald Trump's drive-by appearance bewildering. The Good Morning Britain host has seen partner Derek Draper, 53, ravaged by the disease after he contracted it in March. So this March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, now 6 months he's been ill. And from his behavior, it doesn't seem that Trump has been even in the hospital for 60 hours, let alone 6 months. After viewing the US president's appearance, Kate Garraway said, if he showed that he was respecting the people around him and respecting the isolation, that would have been a heroic message, and that would have absolutely benefited the country. There are children who have died with their moms and dads not being allowed to see them. So why does he think it's more important for him to get into that car? It makes you think he still doesn't know about COVID. He's having all sorts of treatments which people who got sick in March, April, May, and June didn't have access to. So he's lucky that he's built on the learnings of people like Derek. Derek is now clear of the deadly bug and slowly regaining consciousness. But his children, Darcy, 14, and 11-year-old Billy, have still not been able to visit him in hospital. That is something Kate, 53, is hoping to change. She added, I believe having contact and a physical presence in that room could be a great benefit. Now, that is absolutely correct that Trump has access to medicine and the learning and the knowledge that the other people, including Derek Draper, have not had. And other people who have lost their children or whose parents have died with their children not being allowed to see them. How could Trump put on that show and drive by greeting? That shows complete contempt. And I mean, Kate Garraway is not being as factually, accurately kind of critical as I am being, and as most people who are observing, based on the comments that he has been receiving. Trump is exposed as completely unfit and cruel, insensitive, and uncaring. And he's unfit for everything. And the Daily Express is really nothing else. That was an accidental inclusion of Kate Garraway's piece in that All right, so the Daily Star has got a kind of headline on the front page, the splash, which it has been kind of trying on most days about the virus. I mean, in comparison with the rest of the Fleet Street titles, the Daily Star front page kind of has been given to mainly mocking Boris Johnson and his failures. And they're doing the same today. And they're saying that another mad day, 16,000 cases not reported in new cock-up. Health chief, only half of Brits will be given vaccine. And then it says, you what? Boris Johnson's dad Stanley in mask blunder for third time in a week. Wobble, wobble, wobble. Thank you. Right? This is the Daily Star's treatment of Boris Johnson's regime and complete unfitness by Johnson and complete disaster. But the fact that they are treating it as a joke hides the tragedy, the truth about thousands of people being completely forgotten and the thousands of people being let down by Johnson and his regime. That's the thing they are hiding there. And their editorial, which says shambles over jabs. And this editorial is not anywhere near what it should be saying. It says that it's time for them, that is Johnson et al., to stop treating us like children and just be honest. That's not good enough. They should be doing the job of protecting people, not just be honest. I mean, anyone can be asked to be honest. That doesn't really unmask their unfitness and their cruelty and their seriously contributing role of negligence. And it is quite clear that this latest so-called cock-up, the blunder of the missing thousands, is part of the hard immunity strategy which they adopted early on, Dominic Cummings and Johnson, to let as many people die as possible. And the Sun is running the story about George Michael's ex, Kenny Goss, has launched a legal bid for $15,000 a month from the tragic star's estate. Apparently, this man is from Texas, and he's 62, and he's suing the singer's family, claiming he was reliant on George's money and should still be provided for. Now, that is something that, in terms of costs and in terms of the losses and damages, we shall be using as a contextual reference in due course, not going into details very much today on that one, but just that's one of the items of evidence, including the fact that the licensed law trader, David Pennick, who is also a member of the House of Peers, was hired by a Manchester council on a retainer of £20,000 a day. So if we compare the charge of £20,000 per day, which means about 7 or 8 hours at most, then multiply that and apply to the real rigorous work that we have been doing for the last decades. How much does it come to? What is the worth? What's the, even at that level, we are not even going to the rate that Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, or Bill Gates charge per hour or per minute. So we'll be talking about all of that and the losses, damages caused by the criminals in Tower Hamlets Council and aggravated by the criminals in Newham Council and the other criminals in other organizations, including the London Fire Brigade and the racist criminals obstructing the due process through the various relevant courts of law that we have been involved in while defending the resources that have been affected by the criminals. In the last 10 years. And here is the Daily Boris graph, which has got the most unbelievable headline. And it's not even in quotation marks. It's just without quotation, without any kind of condition, without any reservation by the Daily Boris graph. It says, that's what he says. So he's worse. He's doing worse. They're doing worse in promoting him like that than even his drive-by kind of narcissism showed. Millions of people across the world are being affected by this virus. And he says that don't be afraid. What should people be then? I mean, this is, it's beyond insanity, which is the Daily Mirror's kind of word for it. It's criminal. It's criminal. And they're speculating that, or peddling the line from the Boris Johnson camp saying that the quarantine could be cut to 8 days. And the Daily Telegraph is full of promotions. And this is the only concession they're making about the need to at least record some of the facts about this criminal loon, Trump. They're giving a timeline as to how contradictory things happen within minutes. On page 7, they're saying that Trump has been all over the place and he's been contradicting, and his staff have been contradicting under obviously the pressure from him. And they're running the same story about the 18-year-old's drugs death, which the Daily Mirror has been talking about. But both the Tory Boris graph and the Daily Mirror, in their apparently kind of sobbing story about the drug deaths of the 18-year-old university child, university teen, failed to point out the round-the-clock failures by the agencies that are supposed to be there to safeguard the children at every stage. And that is what councils are there to do. Local councils are supposed to be doing that, as well as the police. But they're not talking about that. They're just talking about drugs. What is drugs? Drugs doesn't, the word drugs doesn't actually represent the truth of what is going on. There are chains and chains and chains of criminality involved in drugs. And in the criminality linked chains are the chains of negligence and failure and contempt for the interests of these children as practiced by the corrupt local councils and the unaccountable police forces and the DPP. And so by talking about just drugs killing a teenager, it doesn't take the debate, the accountability anywhere near where it should be. Because it's just a statistic. This kind of story is just statistics. So therefore, the daily Boris Graf is failing to tell the truth, as is the Daily Mirror. So there is in fact, the Daily Boris Graf is only able to criticize the police if the police can be linked to letting environmental protesters do any protests without being treated as criminals, which is what it is here. Inquiry into police failure to use full powers on XR protesters. Now, they want an inquiry into democratic protests to help the environment. That is what this Daily Telegraph is about. That's where it is interested in protests. More importantly, it can only make itself able to publish anything remotely critical of the role of the police. If it can link the police and their powers to any tolerance of protests. That is how corrupt the organ is, that is Boris Graf, which has paid Boris Johnson millions of pounds of bribe money over the last, 8 years, 9 years, 10 years? And Boris Johnson has been given any pretext, an excuse to claim that money under pretext of writing. Boris has not written anything original at all. As his tenure in the post at number 10 Downing Street has shown, Boris Johnson is not a fit person. He's not competent. He's not efficient. He's not caring. He's not intelligent. He's not engaged with the facts. And as that particular few seconds of Ed Miliband showed, Boris Johnson was completely out of his depth. So why do they keep promoting him and shielding him? What is the mystery? So there is a piece on page 15 about the fighting that is going on between the two countries, between Nagorno-Karabakh and Azerbaijan in Central Asia, not far from Turkey, not far from Afghanistan, not far from really Pakistan. So Melanie McDonough, who used to be on the Evening Standard, No Standard, has now been given a spot by the Boris Graf. And the Boris Graf is carrying a rare piece by the ultra-right-winger Ian Dale, who is saying that there is a hole at the heart of the government. You could say that again here, Ian Dale. So these people are most reluctant to condemn Boris Johnson, even though they know that he's unfit and he's doing severe damage to the public's welfare and our public health, and his regime is completely a disaster. Now, there is a kind of, this kind of homeless person is the only type of homeless person that the Telegraph can bear to call homeless and give a space to. This is a homeless. She doesn't look homeless, is she? And she's not, because she's saying, I'm 55, successful, and about to be made homeless. Now, how dare they? Because this is a class thing and the race thing. What she's complaining about is nothing as compared to the denials and deprivations caused to people, thousands, millions of people in this country. by the judicial corruption, the courts' corruption and racism, and the criminality of the local councils. But they won't publish anything like that if it concerns the rights of the persons who are either in the non-cognitive group, as the Spectator has discovered the white working class to be, and if their background is Asian or African, and God forbid if they're Muslims. The Telegraph has been a particularly anti-Muslim organ. Long before the Barclays brothers got hold of its ownership and started to bribe Boris Johnson as if he was the most important kind of source of their business, whatever the secret is. Because Boris Johnson's columns, which have been the pretext for him being bribed to the tune of millions in the last decade or so, they have not contained anything intelligent, let alone enlightening. So what is the secret? And nobody has investigated. Even the Guardian has not investigated, and I say even the Guardian because it was the Guardian that claimed credit for the series of investigative reports that led to the setting up of the Levison inquiry, although it didn't produce much difference in the behavior of the Fleet Street media, but the claim was that the Guardian did the critical investigative stories that led to the realization by Cameron that something had to be done as a diversion. So they appointed Levison, Brian Levison, who later chaired the Queen's Bench Division in the High Court for several years until his recent retirement. We shall be talking about Brian Levison as the president of the Queen's Bench Division in due course in a dedicated detailed piece or more than one. But to refer to his Levison inquiry and his impact on the behavior of Fleet Street, so far the behavior hasn't changed. And my perspective is that the behavior has to be changed from lying to telling the truth. It may be a simple statement, but this is a most profound statement that can be made about the behavior of the newspapers called Fleet Street. They're not telling the truth. And the Guardian, which is the most hypocritical, most corrupt and racist of the whole lot, is still kind of ingratiating itself to Boris Johnson on the front page, as we have already commented on our Facebook and Twitter accounts earlier this morning. PM pledges to boost UK offshore wind farms. It's nothing to do with Boris Johnson doing any of this. Boris Johnson is only, in propaganda terms, jumping on a bandwagon that has been long overdue and being advocated by so many people and campaigns. So the Guardian should be saying that at last Johnson is so desperate that he is now reluctantly agreeing with the campaigners. That should be the headline in the focus, but no. Catherine Vane, who is the editor of The Guardian, is another liar after Alan Rubisher and Peter Preston before him. So The Guardian has kind of milked the publicity, saying that it's the liberal paper. But it's not. It's a corrupt platform which is now increasingly doing service for the right-wing reactionary denials of races. And it has no shame in putting this headline about Trump. It says, without any quotation marks, Trump out of hospital after COVID treatment. That's not true. They should be telling the truth that questions are rising about the truth about whether Trump was ill at all or whether he staged it. That should be the factual headline. And then this is also matter of factly, the Guardian publishes the latest confession to lying and incompetence and pandemonium by the Johnson administration. But the Guardian is not treating it as that. The Guardian is calmly peddling the lie as if it's not that important, it's not that serious, it's not that damaging to the people. Now, the quotation of Jonathan Ashworth, the Labour Party's opposition spokesperson on health, is in that red thing in there. That should be the headline. That should have been the headline. Because he's saying that this isn't just a shambles, it's putting lives at risk. And he should apologize. Johnson should apologize, I would say. That's a apologize, resign. I would say that the demand is for Johnson to resign and en masse with his whole lot of violators of people's safety. And they are completely unfit. And typically, the Guardian has found a piece about the black janitor joke by Credit Susie and apologize. This is the month of Black History Month. And there is a piece from Barking. There is East London and Newham. And it says that on page 7 that people aren't wearing masks and not observing the safety guidelines. And others passing by are saying that those who are violating the safety guidelines should be fined. Now, John Crace is the one who has got the headline absolutely spot on. He says, I'm a pragmatist, said Sunak. Sunak is the finance minister. Unaware that his party is run these days by lunatic fanatics. Well, John Crace is a newcomer. He's an infant, if that is what he believes. It's not these days. Lunatic fanatics is the phrase that applies to the Tories for the last, 60 years at least. Well, I'm saying that because I do make a concession to Harold Macmillan for, if not for competent governance, but at least for the fact that he had a sense of wisdom about his opinions, some of the opinions that he has been credited with. So at least for that, like the family silver and events, dear boy, events. So those contributions I recognize, and those contributions are not matched, equaled or repeated by any of his followers. And the Guardian, as I said, I put this aside because the Guardian contains typical tittle tattle and rubbish that it claims constitute its liberal kind of pretensions. But it doesn't tell the truth any more than the rest of Fleet Street. And we shall be continuing the diagnosis of Fleet Street. This is coming up to 10 minutes to 9 GMT on Tuesday, the 6th of October 2020. And we shall be doing that, particularly updating on the reported state in dealing with the gang rape in Silot, in Bangladesh, that took place on the 25th of September 2020. So 25th of September, that is 11 days ago. And the indications are that the particular gang is being given a token kind of series of treatment that every criminal should have been given, because there is extraordinary kind of evidence that rapists and violators against women have been hiding under covers of being members of the Awami League, which is in control of the government in Bangladesh. And various branches, the Awami League has had dozens of branches of criminals constituting various levels, like the student league or youth league or whatever other league. The league is the telltale word. Anything comes with league in the name is most likely to be connected with the Awami League, which is in Bangladesh, has been in control of the government for more than 10 years now. And over the last more than 10 years, these gangs of criminals have murdered, massacred any number of people without any real kind of justice for the victims or their families or their bereaved or their loved ones who have been struggling to survive after this traumatic experience every time that life has been destroyed by these criminals. And so therefore the criminal gangs, individually and as gangs, in Bangladesh over the last 11 years have been allowed to operate under the de facto license. And the license is they're connected with the league, one league or the other league, either youth league or student league, it doesn't matter. The league is the license. So criminals have joined the Awami League, disguised as members of this league or that league. And the criminals have been in control of these organizations. The exceptional interest in putting this particular gang of rapists, in the case of Sylhet MC College, under the, quote, authorities kind of spotlight or attention is not just connected with that particular gang rape, but also the defilement, the violation of the generally accepted sanctity of the MC College name and the institution. As I said before, MC College is a rare kind of name which has enjoyed more kind of support, public support from the communities in Silot than any other institution, in fact. And it's something that crosses boundaries of faith and other kind of differences. Because there are not many institutions of education, so-called, in Bangladesh that have contributed to their local area's reputation. And the MC College name has been associated with good academic, comparatively good academic performance. And also the hostel that was chosen by these gangsters to commit these particular latest crimes, because it's not the word gang rape doesn't actually tell the facts, because it's a series of rapes and series of violence against the person, the victim, the woman. So there has to be some other descriptions that compensates for this inadequacy. I mean, what is this victim going through? What kind of person has she become? She will never be the same again. Her life has been destroyed. Her life has been completely, indescribably destroyed by these criminals. She may be physically alive, but she is completely dead, destroyed many times over. As many times has she been destroyed as the numbers of violations against her that these criminals perpetrated under the license that they were members of the Bangladesh Student League or BCL, Bangladesh Chhatra League. So far as I speak on the morning in London of Tuesday, the 6th of October 2020, I have not come across anything from the Bangladesh Awami League resolving to end rape in Bangladesh. Rape is used as a collective, plural and singular as well. Nor has there been anything remotely similar to what we have been saying, calling for. No rapist must live in Bangladesh. And the belated awareness by some Islamic groups in Sylhet. I noticed this because I noticed that there was no Islamic groups doing any public kind of protests or demonstrations after these gang rapes violations took place. So there has been in the last 48 hours some Islamic groups coming out in the street and making the same demands that other groups have made already, including the demand that the rapists must be hanged and must be given the death penalty. That is the demand that has been expressed by most people that have come out on the streets. And I'm saying that there has to be a long-term policy by the government of Bangladesh, by the Bangladesh society. Bangladeshi people must not, the people Bangladesh must not allow rape in Bangladesh and must not allow rapists to live in Bangladesh. Cannot make it clearer. It is simple, but very clear and very forceful and very necessary. And that is something that we shall be obviously watching, always be watching, and the life and safety of the woman, the child, the girl must be treated very markedly differently by Bangladesh from now on, as part of the demand, as part of the need for Bangladesh to end rape and violence against women, denial of rights of women, of all backgrounds, of all stations and walks and sections of society in Bangladesh, of all types of abilities and disabilities, whatever. Women in Bangladesh must be treated with the highest level of respect, not as a slogan, but in reality. Every stage, every part of the country, every institution, every agency, every service provider must respect woman, not just as a token show, but in fact, in truth. That is the least that must begin now. And the declaration, we are giving the declaration. It should not be difficult for the Bangladesh government and Bangladesh institutions to copy us and say the same. We don't mind if they copy us, because we want that to be happening, to be realized and real, to be made the real behavior of everyone in Bangladesh. So we shall be continuing. This is 9 o'clock GMT on Tuesday, the 6th of October 2020. We shall be continuing part B, hopefully in the next hour.